Shane Terry from NuVeda, from Nevada. He is a unique guy. His background includes being Top Gun. That Top Gun. So we had an interesting time talking about that, and actually the similarities between Cannabis and Top Gun, if you can believe it. So here we are. So Shane Terry in studio from NuVeda. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Indeed. All right. So you're in town. There's an NCIA thing happening in New York. It is, to timestamp it, late September 2015. And you are guns blazing in Nevada, right? Is that about right?
That's correct. It's actually exciting to be in New York. So I went to my first cannabis event, was a combined ArcView and NCIA week in Denver.
Sure.
So all my experience has been on the West Coast. So to come here to New York and see the reach that this business is having is pretty inspiring.
Indeed. And let's make sure we understand where you're coming in from. When was that event? What year?
That would have been June of 2014.
Yeah, so last year, which feels like 7 years ago.
Absolutely, a lifetime ago.
And, just let's kind of go back, and the window's open here, so if there's an ancillary noise, so be it. But let's go back in time. How did you find, the opportunity to attend the ArcView/NCIA event in, just 1 year ago?
Yeah, I think it was right when I first started getting involved in the industry, and I heard of the event just from some friends at ArcView as one of the events that you definitely wanted to attend, and I would get a better idea of like what the cannabis industry is all about. Nevada really hadn't picked up anything yet, so using the NCIA to really be able to get an idea what vendors are out there, what the temperament of the industry is. That's what I was really, and it was in Denver, so there was obviously like a lot of progress and things happening in Denver and momentum there. So it was just kind of exciting to take a step away from my old career and have that being my first cannabis experience.
All right. So you mentioned temperament of the industry. What do you mean by temperament? What did you find, I guess?
Well, I had no idea what to expect. And you obviously, at that time, there were a couple reality TV shows that were on, but I hadn't really had any personal interaction with anybody else from the industry outside of Nevada's pre-licensing stage. So ArcView kicked off about 2 days before the NCIA event, and I was so surprised at the level of professionalism and credibility of the people that were getting involved in this industry. I was just like floored and humbled at the same time to see, legitimate, credible people that were so far different than any stereotype that I had coming in the industry that was there. So it was a sigh of relief to see that, and it gave me a lot more comfort of what I was getting into. And then the industry trade show right after that was this massive event. I still think it was probably the biggest one that I've gone to. Mm-hmm. And it was just awesome to be able to see the talent that was there putting all this together. And that was kind of my aha moment where I really realized the potential of what was in front of us.
All right, so you're going there and you're thinking, okay, maybe, and then when you saw the reality of the industry and it being actually full of professionals, you said, okay, maybe.
Yeah, and I think I'd already burned my bridges and I was at the point of no return by the time I showed up. So, I was committed either way, but it just really put on a different twist. And now I saw the level playing field that was out there and realized where we need to position ourselves to be competitive in that market.
So there's a couple of ways into the industry, as I've noted from, we've got about 75, 76 of these things, probably 80 by the time this one comes out. One is an economic downturn entry. Here's what I was doing, and that kind of went away, so I had an opportunity in cannabis. The other is patient story. So I'm a patient or a loved one is a patient. It sounds like you're more in the former category. Maybe the industry you were in kind of fell away. Is that fair?
It didn't fall away. It's actually still thriving. It's just thriving without me. So
so what happened? Let's get into that. What were you doing, and when did you decide to kind of jump?
Sure. Let's see here. Right around January of last year, January of 2014,
right,
was when I first started discussing this business with the group that's now two of them are my business partners.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was a commander at the Air Force version of Top Gun in Nellis Air Force Base, flying F-16s for about 14 years. I went through the program a few years before and then was asked to, just like the cliche of the movie, asked to come back as an instructor.
Yeah.
And so from a flying jets in the military perspective, probably at the top of my career, and it was taking off exactly where I wanted it.
Now, I need to interrupt you because, of course, you're kidding.
So at that moment, I figured...
This is a real... So this is what I love about Shane Terry. I tried to set you up differently, but you didn't take the bait. You were Top Gun. I mean, you were Tom Cruise. This is the movie.
Yeah, Tom Cruise is a little older than me, and yeah, we fell under all the stereotypes of, like, it's kind of ironic because... just like the cannabis industry, people who don't understand it have their stereotypes.
Yeah.
Like, that's the same from the movies. So everybody just assumes that we fly jets and play volleyball and ride motorcycles.
Sure.
And meet hot girls all the time.
Right, something about killing McGillis or whatever.
Yep. No, that's far from the reality. But, either way, that's what got me to join the Air Force for sure. But then, so I was loving everything that I was doing with my career. And, but at the same time, I knew that I wanted to eventually I wanted to exit, that career field. And, there's some people in my career were going on to the airlines, and others were, doing lifelong military stuff. And I just figured that I was really inspired and intrigued by the world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So I was working on a couple other businesses at the time, trying to figure out exactly, what I wanted to do. And so I figured I was going to leave the military in a couple months. And at that time, a long time good friend of mine contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm considering starting a cannabis business. Do you have any interest?" And I was like, "Oh, of course not." No interest. I had my stereotypes. I mean, go figure. If I was in the military for 14 years plus college at the Air Force Academy, I didn't have a lot of exposure to cannabis or anything else in that kind of culture. So. I had my negative stereotypes of what that industry was. I just figured that, it would be a lot of people that were under a false pretense of this medical market to be able to consume recreationally. And I just dismissed the idea immediately. And right after that, there was the Sanjay Gupta's first weed special came on.
Right. And
so that gave me a whole nother perspective of what the industry was about. And then also the business partner that approached me, he was still is a very successful physician in Nevada. One of my mentors in business, spirituality, personal life, and everything. So it kind of struck me. I was like, if he is involved in this, then there's got to be something more to it than what I perceived. So I started digging a little bit deeper and did my research, and that was just where. One, I felt terrible that I had these stereotypes that existed, and I didn't open up my mind to be able to identify or even start asking the questions to really start looking for the truth in it. And then I also saw, as I became more familiar with it, there's this huge, pending socioeconomic shift of this cannabis movement. I thought it was probably one of the most powerful social movements that I've seen in my lifetime, and probably a lot of people since 50s, 60s, 70s. And so to be a part of that change and to see where it was going in America was an extremely powerful opportunity. And I've always believed, I would have applied social responsibility, conscious capitalism, whatever you want to call it, to any business model. And I thought that cannabis was the perfect fit for that. It to me, I perceive it as more of a lifestyle, a wellness. It can be medical for some, it can be adult use for others. But, I really see the future of it, of being an integrated lifestyle. And what that means as an economic platform, as a social change platform, there was so much going on in the industry that I just figured there's no way I couldn't be a part of it. It basically inspired every aspect that I wanted from entrepreneurship.
That's fantastic. You came in through the concept of entrepreneurship, and then you, maybe enlightened is the wrong word, but you really you came alive with the concept and the understanding of what could be in this industry is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and that development took a long time, and I remember when we first started putting together our business model and writing our core values and what our mission and vision statements were, even that was a significant change from where we are now. And, I think what we first envisioned for our business we would be a very sterile, very pharmaceutical, we would be the most medical group that was out there. And then once we started understanding a little bit more of the potential and how there's definitely an avenue for those types of businesses.
Sure.
We definitely didn't want to be seen as your stereotypical, what people would say like a pot culture or,
Sure.
any of that stuff. But I really saw an opportunity for cannabis, like I mentioned before, to be a balanced, integrated lifestyle movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as we started to refine our business model, these are all elements that we brought into not only what do we represent as individuals that are in this space, what do we represent as a company that's in this space, but how do we want to position ourselves from a thought leadership perspective in the industry, and what do I want to be proud to tell my mom about and my friends that I'm involved in this business and building this business, and what does it reflect and what does it say? And I think that's kind of where NuVeda has come to this point to, we've learned so much over this past year, and I think the industry overall has just continued to learn and grow and expand. Mm-hmm. And new ideas, new influences come into this on a weekly basis. And I think you need to be adaptable and flexible and just be able to perceive all those things and maneuver your business model where you see the industry evolving.
Totally. And new people come into this all the time. And you once were one of these new people who at face value, it doesn't make sense. What are you doing in this? Right? So let's get that backstory. We need to find out about Top Gun. We need to find out about the school. We need to find out about everything. You went to Air Force Academy. You knew you wanted to fly. Is that where did that hit you as a kid, or when did you decide that you wanted to be in the Air Force?
I'm trying to remember when. I think it was like 1986 when that movie came out.
I think so.
Jesus,
yeah, sure.
A while ago, dating ourselves. But so my dad took me to see that movie, and I walked out of there. I'm like, I want to fly jets.
All right, so that really was it. That movie was it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was it.
How old were you at the time?
10. Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah, thanks. Just math in public.
Yeah. No, that's fine. And then from then it was, I'm just going to go do that.
Yeah, I started looking at all the different, what is the best way to be successful in that aspect, and I identified going to the Air Force Academy, not only to pay for the college, but we had a higher chance of going to pilot training through that. So I went through the Air Force Academy, did well enough to graduate and get into pilot training. Pilot training was a challenge at that point, at least in my class of about 35 people. I think 5 of us got jets, the rest got helicopters and, larger transport planes.
Uh-huh. Well, what if you had not gotten a jet? Like for your buddy that got a helicopter, what happens,
Yeah, I think at this point I probably would have done a couple years in the military, then maybe even making those inter-flight announcements about how fast we're going and how high we're going, but referencing the high in a completely different way.
Indeed. What do you think the key was? Because that's an early success right there. You just showcased the fact that there's a good possibility you didn't get jets. What do you think it was that, obviously you have this goal, not everybody achieves their goals. What do you think it was that, made you succeed to get that jet?
Perseverance, I guess. At fault, I'm a workaholic, so I would love to say that I'm just naturally talented or intelligent, would be able to just test higher than anybody else, but it wasn't the case. I think there's a vision where I wanted to get myself, and I was willing to do anything that it took to get there, and willing to dedicate the time and the efforts and the energy to make it happen. And I think that's kind of the same. You have a dream and it means so much to you that, to pursue that dream and achieve it. And I think you'll find the same exact mentality as most people in this industry.
Totally.
This, is a different kind of war zone for me. But I mean, to be successful in the cannabis industry with all the dynamics and stresses and changes and threats, and, it takes that same sort of perseverance.
So I want to continue to kind of draw those parallels between the two battlefields, as you say. Actually, you said war zone. I'm bringing it down to battlefield. But I do want to, not very many people, Shane, have your story in the cannabis industry, let alone anywhere. So I do want to kind of hear this. You get the jet, right? And then even still, that's not Top Gun school, right? I mean, even still, you've got a long way to go from there. What was that path?
Yeah, so let's see. My first assignment was in South Korea. And so I spent a year and a half there. That was my very first, after I did the F-16 pilot training and everything in the U.S., went out there. And, I love the culture. And that's something that I definitely miss from the fighter pilot community. It's, it's a band of brothers. It's a culture. It's a lifestyle in itself. And you become extremely close to the people that you spend some very long hours with in some very stressful situations. So I did pretty well as a wingman and went pretty early to be a flight lead. And then I ended up going, my next base was Italy. So I got Southeast Asia, where I was traveling all around, Thailand, China, Bali, tough break, right? And then the second base was Italy. So
that's horrible.
Oh yeah, it was perfect. And through my 3 years at Italy, I did well there, and became a forward air controller, which is actually probably my favorite part of flying F-16s. It's this role where you get to overwatch the guys on the ground. So all the Army guys and Marines, we particularly worked very closely with Special Forces guys. And when the SEALs or combat controllers are doing their missions at night, we would be there with 2 F-16s, watching them every step they go. And then when they get in trouble, we're there to be able to react with the ammunition, hardware, and everything that we have. But it was a really like a protective mission. I felt that like my entire purpose for being there was just for those guys on the ground. Yeah. And it was very powerful when you see, a lot of these guys are 18 to 20-year-old kids that, they're the ones that are doing the fighting on the ground. And it was humbling to be in a position where I might be able to, save their life, or at least be able to help them in a time of need. And so I love that aspect of it, got really involved. That actually developed as I think I mentioned, like my favorite part of flying the F-16. Yeah. And as I became an instructor, that's kind of where I focused my energies. I felt that was an extremely important mission. And through that kind of development, I started doing well enough as an instructor to get highlighted and nominated for Top Gun. When it ended up going to Top Gun, they take about roughly 20 people a year out of the 4,000 F-16 pilots worldwide.
That's a low percentage. So
it's a low percentage, and so don't get me wrong, there's definitely luck and timing that comes into all these successes. I don't care if it's flying or cannabis, there was a window of opportunity where the timing worked out. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of luck, and you put yourself in the right place at the right time, and you at least got a shot.
Right.
So I went through the Top Gun as a student, and ended up graduating as the outstanding graduate. And
well, before we give you accolades for that, you did mention that it wasn't necessarily the same as what we saw in the movie, motorcycles, volleyball. Well, what do you mean by that?
I think for every hour you fly a jet, you get about it feels like 8 hours of paperwork and debriefing and analysis of what you did right, what you did wrong. Not to mention probably 12 hours of planning just for that, the day before, just for that hour. So, it's what they show in the movie. You go to the whole dogfighting thing. It looks fun, what everybody wants to do, and then you crack open a beer and you go to the beach and ride a motorcycle. And
sure.
They don't capture you're in a debriefing room until literally sometimes 7, 8 in the morning. You'll see sunrises and everything. Well, if it had windows, you would see sunrises, but you're in there. It's their long days, especially when you have an instructor-student relationship. That same mission happens, but then you have an additional couple hours of, as an instructor, having to have like the final last words and teach the student what they did wrong and how they can fix it for the next time. But some of the skill sets that I think I learned and developed through that is it's completely analytical. Mm-hmm. You have to plan for your primary strategy and then literally exhaust every single contingency that could go wrong. And then that's all in the planning phase. It's extremely complicated with attention to detail. And sometimes there's 100 jets in the sky, and if you're off a little bit of an altitude, or you don't properly set up your deconfliction, you run people into each other, and bad things happen when planes crash in
Indeed.
the air.
Yeah.
And but so it was extremely purposeful and methodical to come up with these missions, and also very task saturating to do these things. And then once you're done flying them, then you reconstruct every single literally second of what went on in the air. I mean, go figure if Uncle Sam's going to spend $1 million on you putting together this mission, you want to make sure that you're getting something out of it.
Indeed.
So yeah.
Hence the paperwork.
A lot of paperwork. Absolutely. But, I love being in that position. Then, like I said, after I graduated as a student and then as an instructor.
Well, let me stop you there, because you said you graduated top of your class, but you said you called it something different.
Yeah, it was an outstanding graduate or some trophy.
How did we achieve this? What do you think it was? Yes, you've gone over the fact that you're methodical. You've got your mind on it. You're not going to give up. You're going to win. Besides that, what do you think it was?
I think I was in a pool of some incredibly talented individuals, and a lot of it has to just do with perseverance and your attitude. I mean, it's a 6-month, highly intensive course, and your personal life is going to suffer, your physical well-being, your mental well-being, and you show up every day, taking your lumps and your failures, which there are many of. And I think what really makes somebody is how you show up the next day after a miserable failure the night before. Sure. And you can let that crush you, or you can just kind of flush it and move on and figure out, like, all right, I learned from it and how I'm going to develop for the next one. And
it's here that I'd love to talk about your folks, your parents,
sure,
or whoever raised you, because I think some of that is inherent in the self. I think that a lot of it comes from, whoever did raise you. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So what kind of people were these?
Oh, they were extremely compassionate. It's I was inspired by both of my parents, and I would say, my father passed away a couple years ago, but he was by far the most inspiring person that I've come across. I grew up wanting to be like him, and he was a salesman, and I watched him. He did medical sales, and I watched that grind of him working, so hard to be able to provide for the rest of the family. And it's just like that blue collar worker, but also to be able to, give that dedication to your work and still have an incredible family life. And, one thing that, I've never learned, I would say the biggest lesson that I learned from him is, how he loved my mother, and it was just a very inspiring thing. It was a perfect family life to grow up with, and they were extremely supportive of my wacky ideas and everything that I wanted to get involved in. And but yeah, I watched him just continue to work for what he wanted, and that's where I figured out that just like hard work, dedication, the right attitude is won't get you everything, but it will get your foot in the door.
Right, and it'll at least feed the kids.
Yeah.
What about your mom? What did she? What was she up to?
She was maybe this is where I got a little bit of the flying side as well. She's a flight attendant for United Airlines,
okay,
and she retired after working 40 years through them, and so I think through her, I got to travel a lot with her when I was a little kid, and I'm not saying I would skip school, but there were times where I would be sick and end up in New York or Seattle or Germany or something like that with her.
Seattle or Germany, exactly.
Wherever United happened to be flying, and that actually gave me a great opportunity because at least through college, I think into maybe 10 years ago, I was able to use her free passes.
Oh wow!
So we just like fly everywhere for free, and
awesome.
It was perfect. So I got to see the world.
And also that kind of points out how you could see a career in the sky. Definitely. Does happen.
Definitely.
So
I was in that environment one way or another since I was a little kid.
It wasn't just a movie. You kind of knew it wasn't that kind of plane, but another kind of plane. I know somebody in there that works there.
Yep, exactly.
Type of thing. All right. Okay. So you graduate top of your class, and then they ask you to come back as an instructor, just like the movie, which is why we don't believe you about any of this, by the way.
There was a little break in between. I worked in this. It was called operational test and evaluation. So all the new equipment, the new technology that's going to be in the F-16, they would send it to us when it was in like beta testing. There's a small group of us. And that's where I really got to learn the systems of the jet, test out the new stuff. And then once we figured out that it would work, then we had to write all the SOPs, all the protocol, and then teach the normal Air Force how they were going to implement it in combat. So that aspect of it, kind of that product innovation, testing programs and all that stuff was very interesting to see the development process. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of parallels in that you bring in, especially in product development and everything in our industry. And then probably the biggest asset or knowledge skill set that I could have gotten from the Air Force, I'm not making this one up either. I was in charge of the Air Force nuclear weapons development program for the F-16.
Of course you were.
If you imagine, for nuclear weapons, extremely regulated, and the emphasis on compliance is second only to cannabis.
Yeah, sure.
But obviously, if the accountability, the traceability, and compliance required to be a part of those programs was so high, I actually took some of those principles and applied it to our compliance programs for when we were building us, just security protocol and that sort of approach as well. And
we're right on the edge of getting back to NuVeda, but how did you get that position? Because that's also ridiculous. I mean, how connected was that, or not connected?
No, it was very not connected. In fact, it was there was another jet that had the nuclear mission before the F-16, and that jet thankfully got rid of it so they didn't have to do it, and somebody had to pick it up, and we were the only capable aircraft. And I think at that point I was probably the low man on the totem pole, but that did have the experience in order to work with that program. So all the other guys that were senior to me said, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, but Shane, you're on it.
Shane's got this one. So that's really kind of it does put you in, we can go through, you being an instructor, and maybe we'll do that later, because we've got the regulations, we've got the trackability, the traceability, we've got the product innovation, we've got the fact that you've got to be completely and totally analytical, we've got the fact that you are part of this community which no one else understands, which is F-16 fighters, let alone the top of the top. I think you call them Top Gun. And so I can see the parallels completely and totally as far as how, you would exist in that and then exist in this. Do you see the one-to-one parallel or not necessarily? No,
you're absolutely right. And I had no idea. Like, it wasn't until after, I learned all these things in cannabis, or start putting together in my business model, or that I start saying, like, wow, there are a lot of parallels. I am taking things from that and applying it to this. When we were first putting this business together, I thought, like, there's some really talented people that come from, everything from commercial agriculture, and assuming that they don't already come from a cannabis background, but, investment banking, venture capital, and just all these things that the industry is obviously directly influenced by. Mm-hmm. And at first I was like, being a fighter pilot brings nothing to the table other than good stories, But I definitely didn't recognize or acknowledge the principles or the parallels prior. But I think it worked out well for the application period. It's you go meet with political representatives, or your congressmen or anything, and they don't really want to talk about cannabis all the time. They want to hear a flying story. But I think that did open some doors as far as to have discussions and have something that made us stand apart. Our entire group is very diverse, their backgrounds and our lifestyles and everything. So I think all of us have a pretty unique story of what we bring to the table.
Just give us the top line on each partner.
Sure. The guy that brought me in here is Dr. Pedram Batty, and he was an executive director at DaVita Healthcare Partners in Nevada, so the largest healthcare firm in the world. Mm-hmm. And he actually was, I wouldn't say frustrated with Western medicine, but wanted to expand his medical professional, experience. So he was in India studying Ayurvedic medicine, and some things with his family came up, and his mom got diagnosed with cancer for a second time. So he came back from India early, and currently has her on CBD treatment. Mm-hmm. And so that Ayurvedic plant-based medicine was very, very similar to what this industry is from the medical side. Mm-hmm. So that's some of his passions and motivations that he brings to the table. He also has one of the best smiles in the entire industry. He just lights up the room. Absolutely. Yes, he's such a personality. And then the two other founders, one of them's Dr. Puya Mahajer. So he's a Harvard-trained, extremely talented pain management specialist that still has his own practice in Las Vegas. And then my other partner is Jennifer Goldstein, and she's our general counsel, so she's an attorney, so she kind of keeps all the rest of us in check. Indeed. Which is much needed. But she's got a Silicon Valley background, and now she works with professional athletes. So she's got some incredible clients that are doing some interesting things in highly visible areas. So she always says that what she's used to in her job is that when they say something on social media or do something that is going to generate a lot of PR, she's got to immediately kind of mitigate that situation in any way necessary. So I see that being extremely important, that having that political and public sensitivity, and she's done a good job. She'd probably be telling me right now to zip it and keep my mouth shut. Right, exactly. What the heck are you doing? But how did you all find each other? You said they found you. How did you all kind of come together? Yeah, I'd known Dr. Batty for a couple years just socially before this industry, before this venture together. So just socially. Yeah, and we had some mutual connections in Las Vegas, became friends, and obviously I had a lot of respect for him and his business development, and then he'd been working with Dr. Mahajer, who was a personal friend of his, but they had also been doing medicine together for, I think, about 10 or 12 years in Nevada, so a long time history together. And then Jennifer, I actually met her the first time, or maybe it was the second time, somewhere around when I went to Burning Man.
Oh, wow.
And so we had a couple discussions about that. And she was helping me structure another business. And I remember we were sitting in a bar one day, and I had brought my other business paperwork there to ask her some questions. And I'd already started exploring the cannabis space with the two doctors. And she mentioned, well, I'm considering about applying for a license too.
Right.
And I was like, really, what have you done for it? Because we had actually already done, gotten real estate, and we were all down this road. And she's like, yeah, I got a couple $100,000. I'm ready to get into it. And, started asking some questions, and then realized that would be a lot better idea for us to join as partners and to try and both learn this on our own. And so that's how she came into the mix. And then from there, we just kind of expanded the ownership group a little bit, but still work pretty closely with those three other founders. Yeah,
absolutely. And you did kind of mention the application process and talking to who you needed to talk to get that done. Tell us what you can tell us without getting in trouble with Jennifer, I guess. Tell us what it was like to kind of get through and then actually receive it.
That was one of the most mentally painful processes I've ever gone through in my life.
And this is literally Top Gun. Yeah. This guy, tested nuclear equipment, and that was one of the most difficult
I've gone through
things.
some mental stress, and it was absolutely comparable. It's like, I remember especially to the end, right before the state applications were due, we weren't pulling all-nighters, we were pulling all week work sessions, where maybe you go get a couple hours of sleep in the other room, then you come right back and work, but we were all sitting in the same office, 24/7, and just the whole dynamics when we first entered, it was this whole real estate rush. The regulations hadn't been released yet. Everybody was going out to do this land grab of any property that they thought would be good, from retail to cultivation, you name it. And if you weren't moving in the beginning, if you weren't acquiring property, you were going to be left on the sidelines. There's simply nothing left. So that aspect was stressful. It's like one real estate agent would get a hint of a possibility that, a tenant might be leaving in a good location. Next thing you know, you'd have 20 cannabis groups that would go swarm on it. And, we were walking out of site visits while other people were walking in, and it was just and the regulations the local regulations hadn't been released yet.
Sure.
So then you would spend all this time battling it out with another group, and I remember there were a couple landlords that you would have to give them business plans and everything, because they wanted to pick out of the 5 or so applicants which one had the best chance of success.
Sure.
And so we were told a lot, like, you guys have no idea who else is competing in the market, do you? There's no way you're winning a license. So we got rejected on some real estate, because they thought that the odds of us winning one were pretty low. But then the frustrating thing, you would go through all that, and then they would release the regulations, and none of it zoned out anyways. So you would, walk away from down payments and all this stuff. But it was just the nature of, if you were to wait for the regulations, there wasn't going to be anything left.
That's right.
And then as it picked up, I'm sure it's happened in other states too, is it's not just the state application, but you apply for every sub-jurisdiction under that. Mm-hmm. And every jurisdiction felt like it would be a good idea to rewrite their own application process. So it's not like you could just use one thing for City of Las Vegas and apply it to North Las Vegas or Henderson. It was all these different jurisdictions. You really had to recreate your model for every single one and just suffer that application process. So it was extremely intimidating, because that's where I started reading the newspaper. And in Las Vegas, just like it is in most competitive regulated markets, it's a who's who of business and politics. Sure. in that local region. And I'm just going through these resumes of the people that I knew were going to be putting in licenses. I'm like, what are we doing? And it just became more hesitant to write one more check or spend another dollar. Again, kind of bringing it back to that perseverance. We knew that we weren't politically influential. We knew that we weren't independently wealthy. We thought that we had a really good vision, a really good business model, and we thought that we weren't going to be entitled to a single thing that was going to come our way, and we had to work for everything. So we met with, face to face with all the political leaders as possible. We were trying to be as active in the community as possible, and have meetings in the local neighborhoods that we're going to hold the dispensaries, and deal with all the sometimes support, but usually resistance and skepticism that comes from that aspect. But it was just a long grueling process to get through. And the one thing that I've learned is if you can put together a team that makes it through that process and doesn't hate each other when they come out on the other end, like winning or losing, then that's a solid team that you're going to be able to rely on for a long time.
Totally. And you did win. You did win more than once, right?
We did. Yeah, we got pretty lucky. We got 2 dispensaries, 2 cultivation, 2 production licenses. So we applied for 7, we got 6, and we had hoped going into this that we would get, have a shot at 1 vertically integrated, 1 dispensary, 1 cultivation, 1 production, and we ended up getting twice that. And right after oh my gosh, I can't believe we got that many licenses. Like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna start that many businesses? So, but it's not a bad first world problems to have.
Indeed. Indeed. So you've got your 6 licenses, and you and I have talked offline about how you're kind of building. What would you like to share about where you are in that process? You've got your licenses. The hard work is done, of course. And what I mean by that is the hard work is still to come.
Yeah. No, it's like, it's funny because you spend all this time writing these applications, and you get a license, and you look at your, couple tens of thousands of pages of application, you're like, crap, I actually have to execute that, and then the execution piece and the application piece, it's just ironic how this industry works. And, we were lucky. We're very good at knowing what we don't know. So we went and interviewed a whole bunch of consultants on both the grow and the dispensary side. And out of all those interviews, we decided to use Forefront advisors to help with the application and dispensary side, and
Chris Crane and crew.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And Trike with Matt Cohen as their CEO for the cultivation side
out of California.
Yep, and so they brought a whole lot of industry experience and credibility that we would never have on our own. But it's just ironic how this industry works because, for the most part, especially for the corporate side and what you're going to develop as a brand identity, we don't have a history in cannabis, yet we're writing SOPs and manuals for these applications, and we're still learning the business as we go. And from the time we submitted an application and now, I feel like we've just had this exponential increase in knowledge of, a lot of it's just experience. During the application phase, you're so busy putting together, what you need to do to try and win on the local level. It's tough to take a breath and go out on the national level. So as soon as we submitted our applications, that's when I finally got to go really spend time in Colorado, Washington, walk through dozens of dispensaries, grow houses, and every operation you go check out, you learn something, Sure. Whether it's I want to be like that or I don't want to be like that, but you're always learning. And so as this evolves, it's it's just been this continual revision of what we thought our business model was going to look like for an application, and really how can we optimize it with what we know now and continue to improve on what we knew that.
Let's get into that now. You mentioned the original core values, the mission, the vision, the values, not anywhere near what they are now. Where was it along that path? You've, I'm sure, been to Colorado. I'm sure been to California. Have you been to Washington as well?
Absolutely. Washington, right. Arizona, try and get to every state, as possible. And, I really like taking a look at Arizona because I think it's very regulated and a close resemblance to what Nevada will be like. A lot of the demographics are very similar. So, we've learned a lot from the way that they've set up facilities there. But
that's a facility side. As far as the dotted line of going where you were, as far as core values and mission, vision, values, to where you are now, where were the aha moments?
Well, I think the underlining principles of the core values still remain the same. It's just I think a little bit. A lot of this we put together a group and we're just getting to know each other as business partners. And now we've had a year and a half or so together, so that refinement of a corporate or cultural identity has changed a lot as well.
Sure.
I think people start bringing more to the table or learning things or contributing in ways that, we didn't expect them to. So we're all just, it's this continuous growth and learning. And I think we also see an opportunity to be more creative and more innovative in our business model. And then obviously, once the number of licenses that we were granted, the physical locations, very high visibility locations of where they're going to be, in relation to the main population in Las Vegas. We realized that we had a pretty significant head start, a great foundation to build off of. And we also saw like the potential, once that hits you, like, wow, I'm a part of this, and based on these locations and number of licenses, we actually have a chance to shape this and mold it and create what this industry is going to be like in Nevada. So that's, it's a very powerful responsibility for a lot of reasons. It's a very heavy responsibility for your own business and not wanting to let down your investors and all the people that have made sacrifices to support us along the way, even on the personal life side. But it's also like a very heavy burden as in the market, because you're immediately positioned as, in given a platform to be an industry leader. And if you choose to accept that responsibility, then the entire city, and not just the city, the nation is watching as each of these markets come online. Your political figureheads are watching, your community is watching, and I think every business owner has a larger responsibility to be a representative of what the future of cannabis is than just being a successful business owner for their own, single operation.
And the way that you are talking about that, the way that you're describing it, it makes me think of you in an F-16 over, some maybe Navy guys or Army guys. You're not just flying the plane. You're overlooking the entire mission, which is the industry. Is that, Yeah,
I think that's accurate. And then, not only are you overlooking what the industry is, but all the people that are outside the industry that are watching very closely to what you do, and every time you go out, like it or not, every time we get on a radio show or we have a press conference, you are not representing your business, you're representing the cannabis industry. It doesn't matter if you're a dispensary owner or you're an app developer. The outside world views all of us collectively as being part of the industry, and we have a social responsibility to represent it well and professionally and be able to shift perceptions. And just like I remember my first, change in stereotype when I went to ArcView and looked around the room, it's like there's incredibly, talented and professional people here. I hope that trend continues, and I hope that all of us are, we can look at our peers within this industry and say, I'm proud to be working alongside of that person, and I'm proud of what this company represents and what they're doing for their community. And I think, one of the companies that inspired, me the most was Harborside.
Everybody says it.
Yeah, of course. And, and it wasn't just because they're famous and they've got a high volume, very successful store. It was like the first time I got a tour from Steve, and showed up after hours, and he gave us a personal tour. And it was like the one thing that he was, at least I perceived him to be the most proud of, was on the wall where there were like City of Oakland, philanthropy business of the year, and all these accolades of what they had done for the city,
the community.
Absolutely.
That's exactly
and
right.
It was just like, and that's when I realized the economic potential we're sitting on to be able to make an impact and say, this is what we believe in, and we are in a position to be able to do something great for our community.
Yeah.
And I love the fact, and I get that, California is a nonprofit state, so that business model is a little bit different. And, not saying that these companies wouldn't have done that anyways, but, a lot of the nonprofit model is going to drive, giving back to the community.
Totally.
But I still think that every cannabis owner, we're in a position to change the world. And we are changing the world. We're changing it right here in the United States. The world is watching as we're starting to adapt these rules, and we have an opportunity to do it and influence change in a positive way. And I think everybody needs to be willing to shoulder that burden and step up and recognize the potential that's in front of you and take action.
It's amazing how you put it, and you put it accurately. And so, fact is sometimes amazing. Give us a sense of where you are as far as, this facility and that facility, and a timeline of what you're expecting as far as your 6 licenses.
Sure. And that timeline's always changing, always frustrating. It's like one of the things that I'll always remember somebody told me, who's probably came from Forefront, or actually I think it was Nicholas Russo is working for Forefront, if you know him. But he's like, whatever you're doing, it's going to take twice as long, it's going to be twice as expensive.
Sure.
And he was wrong. And it's probably three times as expensive and 3 times as long. But go figure, is like you're managing millions of dollars of construction projects all launching at the same time. And as we're developing these, you run into your challenges. And And there's not a lot that you can take. I mean, there's no business model or playbook that you can pick up and say, this is how to launch a cannabis business.
In Nevada.
In anywhere.
Yeah, no, well, I'm saying, even if there was, there isn't one for in Nevada.
Absolutely. It's like every state is its own microeconomy and its own market. So, and it's like the industry is evolving so rapidly. And I think, when we were looking at it, and sorry, I'm kind of departing from where we were going with this, but, part of my frustrations with this industry is because, go figure, as this existed in the black and gray markets, people aren't going to publish a lot of literary material on it, and say like, hey, authored by so-and-so, here's my address, contact me with questions,
There's a few guys that have done that.
There's a few, absolutely. But for the most part, you can't pick up like Harvard Business Review and learn about how to structure your HR, department or something like that. But so with that frustration, we had to look at traditional retail, commercial agriculture, manufacturing, supply chain management, all that stuff, where they do have published literature, learn from the parallel industries, and then try and apply that to cannabis. And even that's a constantly evolving process. And there's so much to learn from what other people have done well in industries that have existed for decades. It surprises me how quickly people think that cannabis is something that, it's so unique, we need to develop this on our own.
Sure.
There are unique aspects of it, of course, but the underlying principles should be able to be found from other areas. And so the more we learn about that, the business model shifts, our facility design, where we want to go. At first I remember, and this is kind of a reflection of our business model as well, and how that evolved. We wanted to be a single, vertically integrated, just one facility with dispensary, cultivation, production under one piece of real estate.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy, about 12,000 square feet. I remember that first property that we had in Clark County. And now we are 4 geographically separated facilities with over 410,000 square feet of authorized grow space. And that single, indoor warehouse has evolved to a high-tech, Dutch greenhouse that Matt Cohen and Trike and his team have been able to help us put together.
Right.
So that project just scaled so much, but so did our vision, our ambition. So it's not a bad situation that it changed. I think we all recognize the opportunity, but it's been a lot larger of a project to launch. So getting back to your original question, finally.
You got a good memory.
Yeah. Wait, what just happened?
Indeed.
Our first facility will be our City of Las Vegas dispensary. It should open up here in the next 2 months or so.
Great.
And so that'll be a huge milestone. Right now, there's only one dispensary in all the greater Las Vegas area that I know of that's opened. So hopefully we won't be too far behind, but I think the market's going to continue to mature over the next couple quarters. And our second facility will probably be our second dispensary. That's on the Strip in downtown North Las Vegas. And then obviously the scale of our cultivation facilities and the size of that, they were all brand new construction on new undeveloped land. So those have a little bit longer timeline. We're looking at about April-ish to roll out those products.
On the Strip, when will that be open?
Let's see.
Ish.
The one that is on the Strip is it's actually about 5 minutes north of Fremont Street on the Strip, so downtown North Las Vegas, and that one.
The old Strip?
Well, Las Vegas Boulevard Strip. So
okay.
I guess actually most people think of City of Las Vegas or Las Vegas Strip. Actually, the main strip where MGM to Stratosphere is all unincorporated Clark County, so it's not even Las Vegas.
Okay.
But unincorporated Clark County actually banned dispensaries from the Strip area.
Uh-huh.
So
for now,
right? And we'll see how long that lasts. But yeah. So when I say the Strip, I mean Las Vegas Boulevard, and that extends all the way from basically the airport way up north. But so we have what I think is probably the third closest location to that main area, what everybody assumes is a Strip. That's the Las Vegas dispensary, right outside the Arts District, and then the one that actually has a Las Vegas Boulevard address, that one will be opening probably Q1, January, February of next year in downtown North Las Vegas.
Okay, so we got 2 months, then we got a little bit more time, then a little bit more time.
Yep.
But then you're open.
And it's actually I wouldn't say purposely staggered that way, but it really works out well. I mean, it's if you imagine launching 4 geographically separated projects in a new market all at the same time, it puts a lot of operational risk on the business. So the way that we're trying to scale it and implement it is, let's figure out everything from go through the whole facility design of one dispensary, and hopefully we learn from that in time to be able to make modifications for the second one. Not to mention just coming up with all the procedures, training your staff, using that staff to train the second dispensary staff. That should work out well. Same thing with the cultivations. We've got them staggered, so the smaller one's going to open up. When I say smaller, it's 61,000 square feet, so it's still a
tiny,
decent little footprint. But to be able to use that staff that gets that one up and running, and then flow that one into the second one as well. So it's ideally that's how everything works out.
Here comes NuVeda. The small one's 61,000 square feet. My goodness.
It is. Maybe that's a fault of the vision, but you start seeing the market potential and everything, and where the demand's going to go, and and here the opportunities that are here today aren't there tomorrow. So we figured, as long as we can convince the investment groups that that is a credible vision, and we've strategically planned a way to mitigate that risk of doing something that large of a scale, and they're phased out. So I mentioned that we have authorization for about 410,000 square feet. It's not something that we're going to launch immediately. That will grow with market demand, and as our operational team becomes more proficient, and hopefully phase in over a couple periods.
Phase it in, fill it in, get it up, get it going.
That's the idea. And then I'm sure if everything goes well, then you take the successes from that and immediately reinvest it into the other projects, and it's a continued growth cycle, I think.
That's it. Raise the canopy, as they say.
Raise the canopy, yep.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much for that. Let's do final questions. We ask the same 3 questions each time, at least we try to. And those 3 questions are, what has most surprised you in cannabis? What has most surprised you in life? And then the third one is easy, either the easiest or the most difficult, which is on your soundtrack of life, Shane. Name one track, name one song on your soundtrack of life. But you did give us a few things that have surprised you in cannabis. What has most surprised you?
I think I'll kind of take it back to that first ArcView experience, and that's the level of credibility and professionalism and talent of the people in this industry, still continue to surprise me. Every single conference, every interaction I have, I'm just wowed by the backgrounds of the people here and what they're going to contribute. And then the fact that every single person, I wouldn't say every single person, but for the most part, everybody really believes that they can change the world. And that's an amazing environment to thrive in. We're all here thinking that we're going to do incredible things for our society and for our culture and for the world, and it's all for a greater good.
It's a fun group of people, without
Absolutely.
question.
Yeah.
I mean, you're Top Gun. We just spoke to Jill St. Thomas, who had a #1 hit in the 90s as a musician. I'm not kidding. So, that's 2 very different types of people, but both bringing something to the table. What has most surprised you in life?
I think is just don't resist to any direction that life pushes you in. We're all sitting here, we're having this discussion sitting across the table. I'm pretty sure that probably 15, 20 years ago, you never thought you were going to be in this industry, and I definitely didn't think that I was, but I think every single time where I've kind of I've felt an energetic shift in one way or direction, I've kind of questioned it. And it almost feels like every single time I just rolled with it, it's just put me in a great place for one reason or another.
I need to clarify that, right? Because you're the guy that became Top Gun based on the fact that you were going to become Top Gun. So it doesn't feel like you're the type of guy that's like, hey, listen, wherever life takes you, go with it. Do you see where I'm having trouble with the fact that you've got both perspectives there?
No, I would say maybe my latest venture into this space is a little bit more reflective of what I just said than the Top Gun thing.
Fair enough.
But no, I think that's something that.
But you also did mention, I don't mean to pick on you, but you also did mention, listen, we spent, overnight, we spent over weeks. So it doesn't seem like it's been easy. I feel like I'm mishearing or I'm misunderstanding what you mean by the, let life take you where it's taking you. What do you actually mean by that? What am I missing?
I guess maybe be very open to the different things that come in your life, and then, don't dismiss them. Pay attention to, to where it's pushing you. Yeah. And then once you really do address it and you figure out, hey, this is something that I'm interested in, don't be afraid to take the risks of pursuing it. But then once you do pursue it.
There we
do
go.
it very, very well with persistence.
Now I get it. Now I understand how that's a Shane Terry comment. All right. From what we've discussed here. So the final question, what song is it? Do you have a track that's on your soundtrack of life?
No, and it's you said it's either the easiest or the hardest question. Yeah. As soon as you started saying that, I'm like, crap, got to look at my phone and figure out like what have I listened to recently. But right. No, real simply, I think one of the first songs I fell in love with was "Stairway to Heaven,"
sure,
Led Zeppelin, and then I recently fell in love with that song again, but with a remix that Grammatic did on it. That's just kind of an electronic music remix, but it's just like, it's perfect. And for some reason, that song has been a memory throughout my entire life.
Yeah, sure. That's a big one. But then you mentioned the remix, so we'll have to check that out because I am unaware of that. But I certainly know the original, Stairway to Heaven. I believe it's off of the fourth album. Do you go that far, or do you go track by track?
I just remember like digging through some of my dad's albums when I was a little kid and discovering it.
So Dad was listening to Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
So Dad's, not only a hard worker, a good sales guy, but also pretty cool.
Yeah, it would have been really interesting to see what his take was on this industry. And when he died, he was working for the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and his personality. Watching how he would interact with the patients there, and that compassion that was required to be somebody's source of strength when they're going through a very challenging time in their lives. I think he would have understood this. And one of the biggest, I guess, the thing I was most nervous about when I made the commitment to my business partners about cannabis, and I had to call home and tell my mom. It was like, is she going to be proud? Here I am, like, she was proud of my military accomplishments, and I was going in a little different direction.
Right.
And so making that phone call and then getting the support back from her, where she understood it, that it's part of being a part of this natural healing process that is, I keep going back to changing lives, but I think that's true. And I think he would be proud of it, and I think he would be absolutely supportive, and I'm honored to kind of live on his legacy of what he would have given into this industry.
That's fantastic, Shane. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
What a great sense of NuVeda. Just a great picture into exactly how those early adopters kind of got in, and certainly a good sense of the feeling on the ground there. So let's watch Shane run, shall we? He's got a lot on his plate, and he's doing a great job, and we'll track his story.